What if I told you the weeds that you've been poisoning are actually more nutritious than the vegetables you're buying at the store? I'm talking about dandelions packed with more calcium than milk, a backyard plant that stops bee stings cold with zero first aid kit, and a weed with the omega 3s of wild salmon. And that's growing right in between your vegetable rows right now. These five plants, most people spray, mow, or curse at them, and they're missing out on free food, free fertilizer, and one of the smartest ecological systems nature ever designed. This one's gonna change how you see your yard forever. Smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss a thing, and let's grow. All right, let me tell you something that might completely change the way you look at your lawn, your garden, and honestly, the whole idea of what a weed even is. Because I've spent years studying nutrition, plant science, and survivor skills, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that some plants that you're yanking out of the ground and tossing them in the trash, they're actually among some of the most viable, nutrient dense, ecologically intelligent organisms that you can have growing in your property. And today, we're going to talk about five of them because once you understand what these plants are actually doing, both for your soil and for your body, you're going to look at that dandelion covered yard and think, wow, nature is just smarter than my landscaper. And I mean that with all the love in the world to those landscapers out there, because truth is, I like a weed free garden. Let's start with the one everybody knows, the one that sends suburbanites into a full on panic every spring. The dandelion. Now, I know, you've been conditioned your entire life to see that cheerful yellow flower as the enemy of a perfect lawn. But here's what nobody told you: dandelions, they're not causing problems in your yard, they're responding to them. That taproot, the one that supposedly is so hard to pull, can drill down several feet into compacted soil, and it's doing that for a reason. It's actually acting as a biological aerator, cracking open the dense, hard-packed earth that grassroots they can't even penetrate. And as it does that, it's pulling calcium, potassium, and trace minerals up from the subsoil and depositing them closer to the surface where other plants can actually reach them, like your lawn. It's essentially doing the work of a soil amendment program for free. And when you chop those big serrated leaves and leave them on the ground, they break down into nutrient rich mulch that feeds the soil biology right underneath your tootsies. All right, from a nutritional standpoint, the dandelion is extraordinary. The leaves are loaded with vitamin A, C, and K, and they contain more calcium per gram than milk, more iron than spinach, and a solid hint of potassium in the roots. And when you roast them and grind them, it's going to produce a rich, bitter free coffee substitute that's been used medicinally for centuries as a gentle liver tonic and natural diuretic. The flowers are also the very first nectar sources available to honeybees coming out of winter. Sometimes they only source in early spring when nothing else is blooming. And if you care about your vegetable garden producing fruit, you need pollinators. And pollinators need dandelions. So before you reach for that herbicide, ask yourself what a dandelion actually tells you. Well, it's telling you your soil is compacted, low in calcium, and instead of shooting the messenger, maybe listen to the message and allow some, not all of them, to grow in your borders. So under your fruit trees, just deadhead them before the seed heads form if you're worried about having them spread. And let them do the remediation work your soil is clearly asking for. Now, let's talk about white clover. And this one, it has a genuinely fascinating story because white clover has intentionally included in lawn seed mixes for most of the 20th century. Farmers and gardeners understood that it was a nitrogen fixer, meaning it hosts bacteria in its root nodules that pulled nitrogen directly out of the atmosphere and convert it into a form that plants can use. Essentially, manufacturing free fertilizer right in the ground. But then in the mid 1900s, broadleaf herbicide companies needed to sell weed killers, and those herbicides happened to kill clover along everything else. So rather than reformulate their product, they just quietly redefine clover as a weed in their marketing materials. And an entire generation of homeowners absorb that message without question, which is honestly one of the more cynical episodes in the history of American lawn care. White clover stays green and lush during droughts and turns regular turf grasses brown and crispy. It suppresses generally problematic weeds by outcompeting them for space. It prevents erosion with its dense root network, and it acts as a permaculture designers, what they call a living mulch, keeping the soil surface covered, cool, and biologically active at all times. For anyone keeping backyard animals, rabbits, chickens, ducks, animals. A clover patch is like a salad bar that grows itself, and the bees absolutely lose their mind over it. If you're trying to reduce how much synthetic fertilizer you put on your property, well, letting white clover get established is one of the single best, highest leverages that you can do because it generally feeds the soil biology and the grass around it through natural nitrogen cycling. That same process that makes legume crops like beans and peas so valuable in agricultural rotations. So the next time you see clover spreading across your planter beds, I want you to resist every marketing impulse that you've ever received and recognize it for what it actually is: a self-regulating, drought-tolerant pollinator, friendly with nitrogen, producing ground cover that you are literally being that are like actually it's great for soil fertility. All right, let's get into plantain. And no, I'm not talking about the big starchy banana yeah cook with Caribbean cuisine. I'm talking about broadleaf plantain. Plantigo major, the low-growing rosette plant with the ribbed oval leaves that you find growing in sidewalks and gravel driveways, compacted footpaths, and basically anywhere humans have beaten the soil into submission. And that's actually the tell right there. Plantain, it's a pioneering species that specializes in colonizing damaged, compacted, and disturbed soil, arriving like the first responder to begin the ecological repair process. Its fibrous root system penetrates and loosens the hard ground, creating channels that allow water and air to infiltrate. And as the plant grows, it eventually dies back and it adds organic matter in the soil, microbes, and it begins to rebuild that biological community that healthy soil depends on. But here's the part that's absolutely that blows people's minds away when they find out about it. Plantain is one of the most effective emergency medicinal plants in North America. It's probably growing within 50 feet of wherever you're sitting right now. If you get stung by a bee or a wasp, bitten by a mosquito, or scratch yourself on a briar or something in the field, grab a plantain leaf, chew it, crush it between your fingers, and release the juices in those leaves and the sap in to the affected areas, and it'll start giving you soothing effects almost immediately. The plant contains compounds that have been documented as anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. And indigenous peoples and herbologists across multiple continents have been using it for years and for these purposes long before anyone had a first aid kit. The young leaves are edible as a pot herb or in raw salads. It does get a little bit bitter, but it's nutritious. And the seed hucks, they are related to the Plantago ovata and, commercially as a psyllium fiber sold in pharmacies and digestive health stores. So your plant in your driveway is simultaneously repairing your soil, providing emergency medicine, and offering nutritional food sources. And most people just step over it on their way to the garage to grab the weed killer. All right, let's talk about purslane. And this one is especially wild because purslane is considered a gourmet delicacy and prized vegetable in much of the Mediterranean world. You'll find it in Greek salads and Turkish cuisines and in North America dishes, but not here in this area. Most people treat it like it's garbage, despite the fact that it is, from the nutritional standpoint, Genuinely remarkable. Purslane is one of those few plants that contains significant amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically alpha linoleic acid, which is the precursor to your body uses to produce the long chain of omega-3s associated with cardiovascular, brain function, and inflammatory control. Nutrients we typically associate with fatty fish like salmon, and they are in the succulent in the ground hugging weed that you don't even plant. The leaves are thick, moisture retaining, which tells you something about how this plant interacts in its environment in hot climates during summer, because it's a patch of it growing between your vegetable rows. It's actually shading the soil surface, reducing water evaporation, keeping the root zone cooler, and it's providing a microclimate for the crops. It's drought tolerant to a degree, and that's why it's so has a lot of moisture in it. Anyway, cultivated vegetables can only wish that they had those things. And these plants are really, really good for that. And it makes it an absolutely critical survival food if drought, heat, and poor soil conditions cause your cultivated fail to garden. Purslane will often be one of the last standing plants, still producing edible leaves that you can sustain that when you more delicate crops have given up. The flavor is slightly mild, slightly lemony, slightly, well, it's beautiful in salads and in stir fries. And I've watched people eat it for the first time expecting to hate it and immediately ask, oh, what is it? Because it's actually quite good. Control it simply by harvesting it. You can eat your weeds, which is about the most elegant solution for gardening problems ever that I've ever encountered. And finally, I'll tell you what, let's talk about lamb's quarters. And this is one of my personal favorites because it's arguably the most nutritionally complete wild edible plant that grows readily across temperate North America. And it grows prolifically, easily, and in disturbed soil, garden beds, fields, roadsides, compacted piles, anywhere soil has been recently turned or disturbed, lamb's quarter is going to appear within weeks. And the reason for that is the same reason it appears alongside with dandelion and plantain. It's fast growing and it's a repair plant. Biologically, the first responder to exposed and vulnerable soils, throwing up a broad pale green leaves to shade the surface, prevent erosion and regulate soil temperature, and begins to the process of rebuilding organic matter from the top down. The leaves have a distinctive grayish green powdery coating, especially on the undersides and on new growth. And they taste like spinach. Actually, they taste better than spinach. Mild, slightly earthy, rich, and cooked down beautifully as a pot herb, blended smoothly with soups, and they can be eaten raw in salads, and especially when they're young and tender. Now, here is where it gets really impressive from a nutritional standpoint. Lamb's quarters has been shown to multiply analysis to contain more calcium, more iron, more magnesium, more protein, and more vitamins A and C than commercially cultivated spinach. The spinach, you're paying $4 a bag for plus at the grocery store. And it's growing uninvited in your garden bed, asking for nothing, no fertilizer, no water, no attention whatsoever. So, for anyone thinking about food security resilience or survival preparedness, this plant deserves serious respect because it germinates fast, grows aggressively, even in poor soils, produces amounts, just a lot of amounts of edible biomass from early spring all the way through fall. And the seeds, small, black, and they're produced in enormous quantities. They can be cooked and eaten similarly to quinoa, which is that rice stuff. Anyway, it's actually a botanical relative, providing a starchy grain-like food source from a plant that requires zero cultivation for backyard chickens and other livestock. Lamb's quarters is exceptional forage. Just feed them to the animals. It can be chopped up or just leave it the way it is, adding significant mineral content back into the soil as it decomposes. The way to manage it is simply to harvest young plants regularly before they bolt and go to seed. If you manage patches that can feed families, mulch your beds, protect your soil and feed your animals simultaneously, which is kind of a multifunction plan stacking that permaculture designers spend years trying to engineer. And nature is just hands free into it for free. So here's what I want you to take away from all this. The concept of a weed is largely a cultural invention, and a fairly recent one at that, shaped by herbicide marketing, aesthetic fashion, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what healthy ecosystems actually look like. Dandelions, clover, plantain, purslane, and lamb's quarters, they're not failures of management. They're intelligent biological responses to specific soil conditions, ecological disturbances, and environmental pressures. And they bring with them an extraordinary package of benefits: soil aeration, nitrogen fixing, minerals cycling, erosion control, pollinator support, medicinal first aid, and some of the most nutritionally dense free food that we'll ever have access to. The goal isn't to surrender your garden to the chaos, it's to develop a knowledge to tell the difference between a plant that's helping you and a plant that isn't. You can still have a beautiful lawn. But to understand what the so-called weeds are trying to tell you about your soil, and to find the intelligent middle ground between obsessive control and total neglect, because that middle ground is where you're going to find regenerative, resilient, low input growing systems that actually feeds people and builds living soil for the long term. And it starts the moment you decide to learn the name of the plant that you're about to pull before you pull it.